Winter is unforgiving. When the temperature drops and the winds turn razor-sharp, survival becomes a desperate battle against the elements. Now, imagine being out there. No warm home, no food stockpile, no reliable shelter. The icy streets become your bed, and the freezing wind is a constant reminder that survival isn't guaranteed. This isn't just a nightmare. For many, it's reality. And when disaster strikes, it could be your reality too. Disasters don't wait for a convenient time. A sudden power outage in the dead of winter can turn your home into an icebox. A financial crisis could strip away your ability to heat your house. Supply chains could collapse, leaving essential winter survival gear out of reach. These scenarios aren't far-fetched. They're terrifyingly real. When SHTF, it's not the strongest who survive, but those who can adapt. Those who can turn nothing into something. And the ones who have mastered this skill? The homeless. For years, they have endured the worst conditions imaginable. They survive in the bitter cold without proper shelter, without consistent food, without the basic necessities we take for granted. Yet, they live to see another day, not because they have resources, but because they have knowledge. They've discovered the brutal, unspoken tricks of survival that most people ignore. They know how to generate warmth without fire, how to stay dry when everything is wet, how to find food when there is none, and how to navigate a world that has turned its back on them. What they've learned is not just valuable, it's life-saving. Whether you're a prepper preparing for worst-case scenarios, a survivalist honing your skills, or just someone who understands that society is more fragile than it seems, these tactics could mean the difference between life and death. When the cold creeps in, when disaster leaves you with nothing, will you know how to fight back? Let's dive into the brutal tricks that keep the homeless alive in the dead of winter, because one day you might need them too. 1. Finding shelter, the first priority. When winter's icy grip tightens around the world, shelter is no longer a luxury. It is the thin line between life and death. Without it, the cold seeps into your bones, stealing warmth, slowing your heartbeat, and dragging you toward hypothermia. It doesn't take long. In freezing temperatures, the body can shut down in mere hours. The homeless know this better than anyone. They don't have the comfort of a thermostat or the security of 4 insulated walls. They survive by finding or creating shelter, by outthinking the cold before it consumes them. The first rule of survival is using what already exists. Homeless individuals seek out structures that offer protection from the wind and elements. Abandoned buildings, underpasses, and stairwells become temporary refuges. Even something as grim as a dumpster can shield against the worst of the cold, its thick walls blocking the wind while discarded cardboard and trash provide insulation. It's not comfort they're after, it's survival. Anything that gets them out of direct exposure to the elements can mean the difference between waking up in the morning and never waking up at all. But when no buildings are available, they make their own shelters. It's a brutal reality. No tent, no cabin, just scraps and ingenuity. Cardboard becomes a barrier against the icy ground, preventing body heat from leaching away. Tarps, plastic bags, and layers of blankets trap warmth, creating a cocoon against the relentless freeze. The homeless have mastered the art of insulation, layering materials to create a microclimate within the chaos. These makeshift shelters don't look like much, but they save lives. When the world turns cold and indifferent, a pile of cardboard and a tattered tarp might be the only thing keeping death at bay. The most desperate seek warmth underground. Hidden urban spaces, subway tunnels, maintenance shafts, and parking garages offer something rare in winter: trapped heat. The deeper underground you go, the more stable the temperature. Even in the dead of winter, underground locations can stay well above freezing. But these places are not without their own dangers. The dark corners of a city's underbelly hold more than warmth. They hide predators, security patrols, and unseen risks. The homeless learn quickly. Survival requires more than just finding shelter. It requires knowing when to run, when to stay silent, and when to disappear into the shadows. For those who can't find a structure or build a shelter, the only option is to blend in. The homeless learn to take refuge in plain sight. Bus stations, 24-hour stores, hospital waiting rooms, and libraries offer fleeting moments of warmth. But they can't afford to draw attention. Staying too long invites suspicion. Looking too disheveled gets them kicked out. They become ghosts, slipping in and out of public spaces, taking just enough warmth to survive another night before being forced back into the cold. Survival in winter is not about comfort. It's about finding shelter, any shelter, before the cold finds you first. The homeless have learned that the world is full of hiding places, but only if you know where to look. If disaster ever leaves you stranded in a frozen wasteland, you won't have time to hesitate. The cold doesn't forgive. It doesn't wait. It hunts. And if you don't find shelter first, it will claim you as its next victim. 2. Conserving heat with limited resources. The cold is a relentless predator, creeping into every exposed inch of skin, stealing warmth with every gust of wind. Without proper winter gear, your body becomes vulnerable, your movements sluggish, your thoughts clouded by the creeping numbness of hypothermia. When SHTF and you find yourself trapped in a frozen world without proper protection, warmth is not just comfort, it's survival. The homeless know this all too well. They don't have high-tech insulated coats or heated gloves, but they've learned how to fight the cold using nothing but what they can scavenge. The first weapon in their arsenal is layering, an art of survival, not just fashion. But this isn't about throwing on as many clothes as possible. It's about trapping heat effectively. Loose layers of clothing create air pockets, holding on to warmth like a second skin. Even the thinnest shirts, when layered correctly, can keep the body from losing precious heat. But when clothing is scarce, improvisation takes over. Newspapers become insulation. Stuffed between layers of clothing, they act as a shield against the cold, their pages forming pockets of warm air that cling to the body. What others see as trash, the homeless see as survival. A few crumpled pages pressed against the chest or wrapped around limbs can mean the difference between staying mobile or freezing in place. It's crude, but it works. Then there's plastic thin, disposable but dangerously effective. Wrapping plastic bags around feet and hands creates a barrier against the wind, locking in heat and keeping out the biting cold. Shoes that are falling apart are suddenly waterproof when lined with plastic, keeping frostbite at bay. Even tying plastic around limbs prevents heat from escaping, trapping body warmth that would otherwise be stolen by the elements. In a frozen world, survival means using what you have, even if it wasn't meant for survival at all. But even the best insulation has its limits. Sometimes the only way to keep warm is to share warmth. Huddling together, pressing body against body, is a trick as old as time. The homeless don't have the luxury of personal space in winter. Survival demands sacrifice. A group of people, packed tightly under layers of blankets or cardboard, becomes a single unit of warmth. Their combined body heat forming a fragile barrier against the deadly cold. It's not comfortable, it's not ideal, but it's survival. And then, there's the simplest, most overlooked trick. Heat in a cup. Holding a warm beverage in freezing temperatures isn't just about comfort, it's about keeping the blood flowing, preventing frostbite from creeping into fingers that are already turning blue. The homeless know that even if they can't drink it, holding on to something warm can keep their hands from going numb, from dying. It's why they cling to cups of coffee in convenience stores, why they hold soup for longer than they sip it. The warmth isn't just in the drink, it's in the lifeline it provides. You may think you're safe, that you'll never be in a position to use these tricks, but the world is unpredictable. Power can fail, supply chains can break. The warmth you take for granted can vanish in an instant. And when it does, will you know how to hold on to the heat before it slips away? The cold is always waiting, always hunting. Learn how to fight back before it's too late. 3. Securing food and water, the reality of urban survival. Hunger is a slow, gnawing agony. It doesn't hit all at once. It creeps in, weakening your muscles, dulling your thoughts, making every movement feel heavier than the last. Thirst is even crueler, turning your tongue into sandpaper, your lips into cracked wastelands, and your body into a husk of what it once was. Without food and water, winter is more than just a battle against the cold. It's a war against your own body shutting down. When the world turns its back on you, you learn quickly that survival means getting what you need by any means necessary. For the homeless, dumpsters are not trash heaps, they are lifelines. Behind every grocery store, bakery, and restaurant, there are discarded treasures. Food that is still safe to eat but thrown away because it doesn't meet retail standards. The key is knowing what won't kill you. Dented cans? Probably safe. Moldy bread? A death sentence. Pre-packaged sandwiches, fruits with slight blemishes, expired but still sealed goods. These are the hidden gems that can mean the difference between starving and living to see another day. But dumpster diving isn't as easy as reaching in and grabbing a meal. You have to be quick, careful, and unseen. Get caught, and you might lose access to a good spot. And in the dead of winter, a lost food source can be fatal. When dumpsters run dry, the city itself becomes a hunting ground. The untrained eye sees only weeds in abandoned lots and park edges, but the homeless know better. Dandelions, clovers, wild onions, edible plants are everywhere if you know what to look for. But sometimes plants aren't enough. Desperation drives people to hunt the unthinkable. Pigeons, squirrels, anything with meat on its bones becomes potential sustenance. The city is full of life, but only the most hardened are willing to take it for survival. Even the smallest things have value in this struggle. The homeless don't waste anything, not even fast food condiments. Ketchup, mustard, sugar, and salt packets pilfered from restaurants or gas stations become an emergency food source. They might not fill the stomach, but they provide calories, flavor, and sometimes even the illusion of nourishment. A handful of sugar packets can stave off dizziness for a while. A sprinkle of salt can help retain water. When survival is a game of inches, these tiny luxuries are worth their weight in gold. But food means nothing without water. In winter, dehydration is just as deadly as freezing. Public fountains, leaking pipes, melted snow. Every drop is a potential lifeline. But drinking unclean water is a gamble with death. The homeless have learned to purify what they find, boiling when they can, filtering through makeshift cloth filters, or using purification tablets when luck is on their side. But even water has its own deadly tricks. In freezing temperatures, bottles left out turn into solid blocks of ice, useless in an emergency. The solution? Bury them in the snow. Paradoxically, snow insulates, keeping the water from freezing solid and ensuring there's something to drink when it's needed most. In a world where everything has a price, sometimes survival comes down to what you can trade. A blanket for a meal, a pack of cigarettes for a bottle of water. Skills, whether it's fixing something, watching someone's back, simply knowing where to find food, become currency. The homeless have mastered the barter system because, in their world, money is just paper. What really matters is what keeps you alive. These are not just the tricks of the homeless, they are the cold, hard truths of survival. When disaster strikes and the safety net collapses, everyone becomes a scavenger, a hunter, a desperate soul searching for their next meal, their next sip of water. The question is, will you be ready? Because when food and water become scarce, the rules of civilization disappear. And only those who know how to take what they need will make it through the storm. 4. Personal safety. Staying alive on the streets. Surviving the cold is only part of the battle. The streets are a hunting ground, and the weak are the prey. If the cold doesn't kill you, the people lurking in the shadows just might. Out here, kindness is rare, and desperation makes men into monsters. Every night is a gamble. Sleep too deep, trust the wrong person, or be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you may not wake up in the morning. The homeless understand this brutal reality better than anyone. They have no locked doors, no security systems, no walls to protect them. Their only defense is their wits, their instincts, and the ability to disappear when danger is near. Blending in is the first layer of protection. Looking too well dressed or too clean makes you a target. It signals that you have something worth stealing. On the flip side, looking too weak can be just as dangerous. Predators look for easy victims, the sick, the injured, the ones too exhausted to fight back. The trick is to exist in the background, to be just another shadow in a world of forgotten faces. Hiding valuables is a skill that can mean the difference between survival and being left with nothing. Money, food, a knife, anything useful must be hidden in multiple places. A fake pocket, a hole in a jacket lining, even inside a shoe. If someone comes looking, they should find nothing of value. But sometimes, hiding isn't enough. Knowing when to move is just as important. The streets have their own rules, and the homeless learn them fast. There are places that are safe in the day, but deadly at night. Some alleys are safe for resting, others are traps waiting to be sprung. Understanding when it's time to leave, when to lay low, and when to disappear entirely is a skill that keeps people breathing. A good escape route is as important as food or shelter, because when trouble comes, the ones who hesitate don't make it out. Weapons are a luxury few can afford. But that doesn't mean being defenseless. The best weapon is avoiding the fight altogether. De-escalation is an art. Knowing how to talk a threat down, how to diffuse tension before fists or knives come into play. But when words fail, everyday objects become survival tools. A backpack isn't just for carrying belongings, it's a shield. A set of keys or a pen can be turned into a weapon in the right hands. A simple whistle can be a deterrent, drawing unwanted attention to an attacker who thrives in silence. And above all, the ability to run, good footwear, knowing the terrain, and having an escape plan can mean the difference between a close call and a final mistake. Sleep is a necessity, but it's also a risk. The homeless don't have locked doors, so they create barriers. sleeping under or behind something, making it harder for an attacker to approach unnoticed. If in a group, sleeping in shifts ensures that at least one set of eyes stays open. And always, always having an exit plan, because if something goes wrong, being trapped is a death sentence. But the most important survival skill isn't found in a weapon or a hiding place. It's awareness. Reading body language, sensing danger before it strikes, recognizing the subtle cues that mean a situation is about to turn bad. The homeless develop a sixth sense for this, a gut instinct that tells them when someone is lying, when someone is watching, when something isn't right. Ignoring that feeling is a mistake few live to make twice. This is survival at its most brutal. The streets don't forgive weakness, and they don't give second chances. You don't have to be the strongest, the fastest, or the most dangerous, but you do have to be the smartest. Because in a world without mercy, staying one step ahead is the only way to stay alive. 5. The power of community in survival situations. When society crumbles, the lone wolf dies first. Movies and survival fantasies glorify the idea of the rugged individualist, one person against the world, thriving through sheer willpower. But reality is far darker. Isolation is a slow death, both physically and mentally. The streets have already shown this truth. Those who survive the longest, those who endure the freezing nights, the hunger and the violence, are not always the strongest. They are the ones who understand the power of community. For the homeless, community is more than just companionship. It is a shield against death. There is strength in numbers, whether it's for protection, sharing resources, or simply staying sane. The world outside is brutal, full of dangers lurking in every alleyway and every frozen stretch of concrete. A lone person is an easy target. A group, however, is a force. Thieves think twice before attacking a cluster of people watching each other's backs. Even the most violent predators hesitate when confronted with a tight-knit group that knows how to fight together. But protection is only part of it. Information is just as valuable as food or shelter, and on the streets, knowledge spreads through the homeless grapevine. Where is the nearest soup kitchen that won't turn you away? Which shelters are handing out blankets? What areas have become too dangerous to sleep in? The ones who listen, who know how to gather and share information, are the ones who stay ahead of disaster. Just like in a full-blown SHTF scenario, knowing where resources are, what threats exist, and how to move safely can mean the difference between survival and starvation, between safety and an ambush. Then there is the matter of trade. No one can carry everything they need, and money is often worthless in the survival world. What matters is bartering, food, tools, even skills. A man with an extra blanket might trade it for a few cans of food. Someone who knows how to fix a broken zipper might earn a meal in return. Cigarettes, lighters, even knowledge itself, everything has value when survival is a daily battle. The smartest survivors know this and build networks where everyone has something to offer. Yet community is not without its dangers. Like any society, even an invisible one that exists in the shadows of the city, there is a social order. Understanding the power dynamics, knowing who holds influence, and recognizing when to keep your head down can keep you from making dangerous enemies. In homeless camps and survival groups alike, there are unspoken rules. The weak are sometimes protected, but they are also sometimes exploited. The strongest often lead, but not all leaders are just. Navigating these hierarchies is an art, one that can make or break a person's chances of survival. But perhaps the most underrated survival tool of all is human connection. Loneliness kills just as surely as cold and hunger. The mental toll of being forgotten, of being invisible, of feeling like you no longer belong in the world, can drive people to the brink. A shared meal, a conversation, even a laugh in the darkness can be the thread that keeps someone from unraveling completely. When the world ends, whether it's the slow collapse of society or the personal collapse of losing everything, having people to rely on, even in the smallest way, can keep you from slipping into the abyss. In the end, survival isn't just about fire and shelter, food and water. It's about finding allies in the wasteland, forging bonds that hold against the weight of despair. Because no one, no matter how tough, can make it alone forever. And in the bitter cold of the streets, where the wind cuts through flesh like a knife and the nights stretch endlessly, the difference between life and death might just be the warmth of another human being. Conclusion: surviving a brutal winter with nothing but the clothes on your back is a nightmare most people can't even imagine, but for many, it's a daily reality. The harsh truth is that when disaster strikes, whether through financial collapse, power outages, or societal breakdown, survival won't be about fancy gear or doomsday stockpiles. It will come down to raw instinct, adaptability, and the brutal tricks that those living on the streets have already mastered. Finding shelter, conserving body heat, securing food and water, staying safe and building a survival network aren't just skills for the homeless. They are survival tactics that could mean the difference between life and death in an SHTF scenario. The cold doesn't care who you are. Hunger shows no mercy. And in the end, those who know how to navigate the unforgiving world with creativity and resilience will be the ones who make it through. Learn from those who endure the worst every day, because when everything falls apart, their knowledge may be the only thing standing between you and the cold grip of death.